Ladies and gentlemen and friends of Trinity, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the inaugural Reverend A.G. Fraser Memorial Oration. This event marks the first of many unique events planned out for the sesquicentennial anniversary celebrations.
දොරතු පුරහඳෙන් ඒ කාලෝකෝ සෙන්කඩගල පුරවරේ දිරෙන රන් තාරකාවක් බඳු ත්‍රිත්ව විදුහල්මෑණියන්ගේ අභිමානවත් ජන්මදිනයක් ඉතිහාසයට එක්කරන මෙම සුවිශේෂී මොහොතට සජීවීව එක්වීමට ලැබීම මාලද පරමභාග්‍යයක් කොට සැලකෙමු. වසර 150ක දිගු ප්‍රෞಢ ඉතිහාසයක් පුරා එදා මෙදා තුර බොහෝ දෙනෙකුගේ අපරිමිත වූ කැපකිරීම අධිෂ්ඨානය උතුම් වාතරයට එක්වී සුභාශිංසනය කරන බව පරම සත්‍යයක්. වර්ෂ 1872 ජනවාරි 17 වන දින මෞපිමට මුළු මහත් ධරණී තලයේ පුරාවට දූරදර්ශී බුද්ධිමත් පුරවැසියන් බිහි කළ කන්දෝඩරට අභිමානවත් ත්‍රිත්ව විද්‍යාල වංශ කතාවේ වසර 150ක ස්වර්ණමය පරිච්ඡේදයට අතිගරු අයලන් ජෝන්ස් පියතුමාගෙන් අත්පත් ලැබෙනවා. මේ පරිශ්‍රය දේවස්ථානය අපි හැමගේම ජීවිත අපේ හුස්ම ඒ ජාග්‍රාහී ප්‍රෞಢ ඉතිහාසයට සාක්ෂි දරනවා. එවන් සුවිශේෂී සන්ධිස්ථානයක සිටින මේ මොහොතේ වසර 150ක ඒ අභිමානවත් කාලය පුරාවට සීල අදත් මින් මතුවටත් සියලු ආගම් සියලු ජාතීන් එකසේ ගරු කරන මානුෂීය ආකල්පවලින් පිරිපුන් උදාර පුරපැසියන් බිහි කිරීමේලා සෙන්කඩගල අභිමානවත් ත්‍රිත්වයට කළ මෙහෙය ඒ සජීවනය සංකේතවත් කරමින් අපගේ ගෞරවනීය ආරාධනය පිළිගෙන මෙහි වැඩමවා වදාළ මහා විහාර වංශික ශ්‍යාමපාලි මහානිකායේ අස්කිරි පාර්ශවයේ උත්තරීතර මහානායක අතිපූජ්‍ය වරකාගොඩ ධම්මසිරි ශ්‍රී පඤ්ඤානන්ද ඥානරත්නාභිදාන මහානායක ස්වාමීන් වහන්සේ ඔබ වහන්සේව ත්‍රිත්ව විද්‍යාලය වෙනුවෙන් හදපිරි ගෞරවයෙන් පාද නමස්කාර පූර්වක පිළිගනු ලබනවා. මහා විහාර වංශික ශ්‍යාමපාලි මහානිකායේ අස්කිරි පාර්ශවයේ පින්වත් අනුනායක පුරණරොසලස් මස්ථානාධිපති අස්කිරිකෙඩිගේ රාජමහා විහාරාධිපති අතිපූජ්‍ය වේඩරුවේ ධර්මකීර්ති ශ්‍රී උපාලි අභිදාන අනුනායක ස්වාමීන් වහන්සේ ඔබ වහන්සේව ත්‍රිත්ව විද්‍යාලය වෙනුවෙන් හදපිරි ගෞරවයෙන් පාද නමස්කාර පූර්වක පිළිගනු ලබනවා. මහා විහාර වංශික ශ්‍යාමෝපාලි මහානිකායේ මල්ලුතු පාර්ශවයේ බිම්සත් වර්ගික කාරක සංඝ සභික දර්ශනපති පූජ්‍ය මහාවිල රතනපාල ස්වාමීන් වහන්සේ ඔබ වහන්සේව ත්‍රිත්ව විද්‍යාලය වෙනුවෙන් හදපිරි ගෞරවයෙන් පාද නමස්කාර පූර්වක පිළිගනු ලබනවා.
I now respectfully call upon our chaplain, Reverend Father Shelton Samadhanam, to lead us into prayer.
Let us pray. O God, whose days are without end and whose mercies cannot be numbered, we thank and praise you for this time of gathering. Especially we thank and praise you for the life and history of Trinity College Kandy, founders and all those who have given their life to materialize the vision of the college through its vision. Very especially as we remember A.J. Fraser, your servant, his life, work and witness. This morning we prayed that this oration will be an inspiration and eye-opener for all of us and to the college to map its future. Be present among us. This we ask through Christ Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Thank you, Father. Ladies and gentlemen, the video you are about to witness is a product of many members of the Student Task Force. This brief video will give you a glimpse into the life and times of this great champion of Trinity.
Alexander Garden Fraser was born on the 6th of October 1873 in Scotland. Young Alec received his initial education at Edinburgh, where he was introduced to the game of rugby. Thereafter, he joined Trinity College of the University of Oxford and graduated in history. Later, he took a course in theology. Alec Fraser was known for being profoundly serious and deeply religious, and yet full of mischief, and was always in high spirits. Despite the fact that he initially intended to study law, he became involved with the Student Volunteer Missionary Union. He was ordained as a minister and eventually became a renowned educationist and missionary. He inspired many through his eloquent preaching to follow the path of God and his kingdom. Then came the golden era of Trinity. A young 26-year-old principal, Mr. A.G. Fraser, arrived at Ceylon in 1904. From then on, for 20 long years, Trinity College went through a period of unprecedented growth. When Fraser arrived at Trinity, the school had fallen into disarray despite his predecessors' best efforts. This led him to pick 4 young gentlemen to instill discipline among the students, thus laying the groundwork for the School Officers Guild of today. Reverend Fraser commenced various long-term initiatives, including the college farm, Allison House, and most significantly, the college chapel. He went on to acquire a 10-acre plot of land in Askyria in 1910 and constructed the Askyria Cricket Grounds, which was later expanded to become an international cricket stadium. Although Trinity was an English-only school, he launched Sinhala and Tamil classes before the government did. The fact that all that he planned for Trinity became government policy for the country half a century later speaks volumes of his visionary approach to education. Amazingly, it continues to do so even today. Trinity became an international model school. 13 different nationalities studied and dwelt here during his tenure. This shows how inclusive Trinity became under the stewardship of Reverend Fraser. The brave character that Fraser possessed was evident when he went to World War I as chaplain to the forces of the British Army, along with 65 boys from college. Reverend Fraser departed from Trinity in 1924. His departure marked the end of an epoch. The Reverend, who was an inspiring personality, did not stop his mission, even though he left Trinity. He was such a well-liked and respected principal that the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography recognized Fraser with an entry that praises him as the finest colonial headmaster of his day. In 1924, Fraser moved to Gold Coast, now known as Ghana, co-founded the famous Achimota School, and spearheaded educational reforms which benefited the country and Africa, and for that matter, the entire Commonwealth massively. It is said that he assisted in the country's fight to gain independence as well. After serving not only Trinity, but having served the cause of liberated education in the entire Commonwealth, Reverend A.G. Fraser died on the 27th of January 1962, aged 88, in England. He was a great fighter, a far-sighted educationist, a charismatic individual, but most importantly, he was a man of great prayer. It is said that if Reverend Ireland Jones founded Trinity, Reverend A.G. Fraser was the one who truly made it the best school of all.
I now would like to call upon our principal, Reverend Father Araliya Jayasundara, to deliver the note of welcome and introduce today's keynote speaker.
Sri Hayagiri Vijay Sundararama Viharadipati, Atipujya Varakagoda Dhammasiddhi Sri Panjananda, Jnanaratana Ambidhana Shamupali Vanshika Mahanikaye, Asgiri Mahavihar Parshave Mahanayaka Mahimipanan Mahansa, Aitihasika Polonnaruwa Solosmasthanadipati, Gedige Rajamahaviharadikari Atipujya Veneruwe Dharmakirti, Sri Ratanapala Upali Abhidhana Shamupali Vanshika Mahanikaye, Asgiri Mahavihar Parshave Jeshtanunayaka Mahimipanan Mahansa, Mahavihar Vanshika Shamupali Mahanikaye Malvatu Parshave, Bimsatvarga Karaka Sangha Sabhika Darshanapati, Mahavela Ratanapal Himipanan Mahansa, Sri Lanka Sabhave Mulika Radaguru, Tritvidhale Palaka Mandala Sabhika, Kurunagil Diyoki se Atiyutum Kirtisit Pranandu Rajakur Prasadin Mahansa, Sri Lanka Sabhave Colombo Diyoki se Radaguru Tritviduhal Palak Mandale Sabhapati, Atiyutum Dushant Rodrigo Rajagur Prasadin Mahansa, Vishramika Rajagur Prasadin Mahansa, Puja Prasadin Mahansa, Apapasale Devagati Garu Shelton Samadanam Pietuma Etulu, Siluma Dinagin Avasarai, His Excellency, Honorable Tikiri Kobbakadua, Governor of the Sabaragamu Province and Member of the Board of Governors, His Worship the Mayor of the Kandy Municipal Council, Mr. Kesara Senanayaka, the Chief Secretary of the Central Province, Mr. Gamini Rajaratna, respected members of the Board of Governors, Principals Emeriti of Trinity College, members of the College Executive Council, Secretary to the Parent Teachers Association, past teachers, distinguished old boys, members of the college management team, members of the staff, my dear students, ladies and gentlemen. It is a singular honor to stand before you as the 20th custodian of Trinity College Kandy as she celebrates the momentous T150 sesquicentennial anniversary. My heart resonates the words of the psalmist. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad. Today we rejoice in unison for the gift of Trinity College. With a grateful heart, I remember with gratitude the untiring efforts of all my predecessors, members of the Board of Governors, the staff, the old boys, and especially the students who made Trinity what it is today. May I respectfully welcome all of you to the second part of the day's celebration, the inaugural Reverend A.G. Fraser Memorial Oration. The words of my predecessor, late Mr. Lionel Fernando, at the centenary prize giving, succinctly captures the raison d'etre of this oration. I quote, "The only privilege that Trinity do enjoy is the opportunity to use the inspiration of the past to lead us to new fields of endeavor, to produce men who could match dedication with self-discipline, enterprise with discretion, upholding faith without fanaticism, the community before the individual, and service rather than self-advancement," unquote. Reverend A.G. Fraser Memorial Oration brings to focus the efforts of a pioneering giant in Trinity history, who over 2 decades transformed a simple collegiate school to become one of the leading colleges in the world. Undoubtedly, the era of A.G. Fraser deserves much more attention, and this event is a simple attempt to rediscover the spark with which this great visionary made Trinity a perennial seat of erudition and culture. At the turn of 150 years, Trinity needs to focus on a robust and holistic education model that empowers the child to face the challenges of the 21st century. It is paramount that all stakeholders of Trinity partner in this critical transformation. The orator this morning for the inaugural Fraser Memorial Oration is none other than Professor Malik Ranasinghe, an old boy, a senior professor in civil engineering at the University of Moratuwa. He is a chartered engineer, international professional engineer, and fellow of the Institute of Engineers, Sri Lanka. Professor Ranasinghe is a former vice chancellor of the University of Moratuwa and the former chairman of Sampath Bank. As a schoolboy, Professor Ranasinghe captained Trinity College, Kandy, at hockey, basketball, and table tennis. The response to this oration will be delivered by Dr. Romesh Ranavana, who left Trinity in 1995. He is a serial entrepreneur, an AI technologist, a programmer, a software architect with over 20 years of experience. Dr. Romesh is a Clarendon scholar with a doctorate in artificial intelligence from the University of Oxford. He has a first-class degree in computer science from the University of Peradeniya. Romesh is a co-founder and CTO of Tengri UAV and SIM-centric technologies. He is also the founding chairman of Slascom AI Center of Excellence. Among many other things, he was also my senior prefect at Trinity. I look forward to listening to these two erudite Trinitians. Our world presents many challenges and an uncertain future. Yet, we look to the end, exploring vistas of excellence, with that same simple faith which Reverend Alexander Garden Fraser expressed in these words, "Thou knowest I did not seek to come, and thou knowest how ignorant I am, but we want this place to be thine, and please make my pound weigh a ton." Most venerable sirs, ladies and gentlemen, may I now welcome on stage Professor Malik Ranasinghe to deliver the inaugural Reverend A.G. Fraser Memorial Oration 2022 on the T150 sesquicentennial anniversary year of Trinity College, Kandy.
महाविहार वंशक सौम्यपाली महानिकाये अस्किरी पार्श्वे अतिपूज्य श्रीमद महानायक स्वामीन महानसेगिंद महाविहार वंशिक सौम्यपाली महानिकाये अस्किरी पार्श्वे श्रीमद अनुनायक स्वामीन महानसे प्रमुख अतिकरु संगरत्न नवसराय Lord Bishop of Kurunegala, Lord Bishop of Colombo, Emeritus Bishop of Colombo, Father Principal, former principals of Trinity College, members of the Board of Governors, President and OBA representatives, distinguished invitees, members of the Board Executive Council, academic heads, members of the academic staff, parents, students of Trinity, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Father Principal, for that very kind introduction. I'm extremely honored by your invitation to deliver the inaugural A.G. Fraser Memorial Oration as a part of the sesquicentennial. We Trinitians have heard of the Herculean efforts of Reverend Alexander Garden Fraser to mold Trinity into one of the finest academic institutions in Sri Lanka. During his 20 years as the principal of Trinity, not only did he take Trinity to great heights, but as an eminent educationist with ideas ahead of his time, he significantly influenced the educational development of our country. I take this opportunity to commend Father Principal and the Board of Governors on their decision to honor the greatest figure in Trinity history with an annual memorial oration. The theme suggested by Father Principal for the annual inaugural oration was Trinity College Kandy, Contemporary Relevance and Future Prospects, vis-a-vis towards a lasting Trinity legacy. I believe the theme is timely and appropriate in the current circumstances. Most of us accept that our education system is too pedantic and exam-focused. It emphasizes on passing exams, mostly with the help of the tuition culture, rather than on learning and outcomes. In that sense, our system of education has little contemporary relevance and has bleak future prospects. However, Trinity should, like in the era of Reverend Fraser, position itself to be a trailblazer in the 21st century educational arena. This requires out-of-the-box thinking and bold initiatives from the decision makers at Trinity. Like the challenges Reverend Fraser had to overcome a century ago, Trinity has to proactively face the academic challenges of the 21st century to be relevant. As we are celebrating 150 years of Trinity College as a premier educational institution, and as I'm involved in higher education, I decided to title the oration Trinity Education, Adapt or Perish. Reverend Fraser was practical in his approach to educational development. I will also take a practical view and focus on what is needed in the near future to make Trinity education relevant. Reverend Fraser's remarkable reforms in education a century ago, like we just heard in the video, like the new scheme introduced at the 1908 Prize Day speech, where teaching science along with teaching of Sinhala and Tamil were proposed, and subsequent introduction of agriculture. It was reported that a half century later, much of Reverend's plan had become the government's education policy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are still recovering from the effects the COVID-19 pandemic have had on our education system. We have no idea what the educational, psychological, and emotional impacts of missing school in 2020 and 2021 have had on our students. These are the critical questions that educators need to evaluate and understand when looking into the future. The elephant in the room, to me, is the post-pandemic developments in education that could drastically change the educational arena. To prepare Trinity education for the future, we have to consider both the most probable changes and the ones that we are not expecting. By imagining alternative futures for education, we can plan for possible future shocks and develop adaptable Trinity education. I have taken the 4 scenarios for the future of schooling that were presented by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, as a part of the 2021 Davos agenda to depict some possible alternatives. The first scenario is schooling is extended, where participation in formal school education continues to expand. Technological advances would support more individualized learning. The structures and processes of schooling remain. The second scenario is where education is outsourced. The traditional schooling system breaks down as society becomes directly involved in educating its citizens. Learning takes place through more diverse, privatized, and flexible arrangements, with digital technology as the key driver. The private tuition classes and online school content from providers like Dialogue and DP Education are local examples. The third scenario is where schools become learning hubs. Schools are connected to their communities, favoring ever-changing forms of learning, civic engagements, and social innovation. The fourth scenario, learn as you go. Education takes place everywhere, anytime. Distinctions between formal and informal learning are no longer valid as society turns itself entirely to the power of the machine. The plethora of courses being offered online today through platforms like Coursera are examples of this scenario. We can construct endless range of such scenarios. The future could be any combination of them, and is very likely that different places around the world will have its own unique systems. Despite this, such thinking gives us the tools to explore the options for the future of Trinity education and their consequences. For today's discussion, I will assume schooling is extended as the probable scenario for Trinity education. I do not see the traditional school breaking down in the foreseeable future, as the school is not only for students to gain knowledge, but it is also a place for students to socialize and learn skills which are essential for their well-being. However, we have to be aware of the scenario where education is outsourced, with the impact of tuition and other private content providers causing disruptions in our classroom activities, especially in the senior classes. Since we are assuming that schooling is extended, let us first discuss the school or the design of school as we have today. Most of us believe we know the functions of the school. Professor Keith Sawyer, the Morgan Distinguished Professor in Educational Innovations at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill School of Education, and the main author of the Cambridge Handbook of the Learning Sciences, which is widely acknowledged as the definitive text on innovative approaches to teaching, learning, and educational technology, states that the schools we have today were designed around the following common sense assumptions. Knowledge is a collection of facts about the world and procedures on how to solve problems. Facts are statements and procedures are step-by-step instructions. The goal of schooling is to get as many facts and procedures into the students' heads. People are considered educated when they possess a large collection of these facts and procedures. Teachers know these facts and procedures, and their job is to transmit them to the students. Simple facts and procedures should be learned first, followed by progressively more complex facts and procedures. The definitions of simplicity to complexity and the proper sequencing of teaching material are determined by the teachers, by textbook authors, or by expert adults like mathematicians, scientists, or historians. The way to determine the success of schooling is to test students through exams and to see how many of these facts and procedures they have acquired. Professor Sawyer states, the design of school is unfortunately not by understanding how students actually learn, and the common sense assumptions of the school have never been tested scientifically. Doesn't that sound very much like the education system we have in Sri Lanka? My presentation is in 3 parts. First, I will discuss the relevance of Trinity education by looking at Trinity's success in imparting knowledge as described by Professor Sawyer using the recent performances of students at the two public examinations, the O-levels and the A-levels as proxies. In the second part, I will discuss the future directions for Trinity education in the assumed post-pandemic scenario. In the third part, I will summarize the key points from my presentation. I will use a three-attribute model consisting of knowledge, skills, and attitudes or values to discuss the relevance of Trinity education. These are the three attributes that a majority of employers look for in their employees. As highlighted by Professor Sawyer, we, the educators, would consider knowledge to be the most important attribute of school or even university education. However, many employers believe that the most important attribute is the proper attitude of the employee. The priority to the employers is described by the ASK, attitude, skills, knowledge model, as it is believed that knowledge can be obtained from a range of sources that are now freely available to us. The Trinity education up to the O-levels was excellent for us. We were inculcated with qualities such as respect, compassion, self-discipline, fairness, honesty, and integrity, the virtues that made a Trinitian stand out. Also, a significant portion of the students successfully completed the O-levels and qualified for the A-levels. As data on this achievement is not available, my guess is that over 70% of our generation were successful in their O-levels. The Trinity's focus of producing all-rounders ensured that the contribution of Trinitians to societies they live in is significant and exemplary. Let us look at the performance of the students during the last 5 years in comparison to us about 50 years ago. On my request, Father Principal kindly provided me the data, for which I am extremely grateful. The table on the screen shows the percentage of students who qualified to follow the A-levels in the three mediums of study. In all three mediums, over 94% of the students have qualified to follow their A-levels in the last 4 years. In the last 2 years, it had improved to over 98%, with the Tamil and English medium achieving 100% twice over the last 3 years. The second table, highlighted in yellow, show the cumulative values and percentages. In all 5 years, over 250 students have sat for the O-level examination, and over 96% have qualified to follow the A-levels. The last 3 years have been remarkable, with over 99% qualifying to follow the A-levels. By any standard, the academic performances displayed on the screen are truly outstanding. I take this opportunity to congratulate Father Principal, Vice Principals, Headmaster, and all the teaching staff from the junior school up to the O-levels for these remarkable achievements. As a fellow academic, you have made me proud of the performances of our students at the O-levels. Being very generous, I would say the percentage who qualified for higher education nearly 40 years ago by obtaining 3 passes at the A-level exam was around 30 to 40%. Poor performances at the A-level exams and nothing significant being done to improve the situation were, in my opinion, the critical issues with Trinity education then. As a result, annually, Trinity lost some of her academically talented students to schools in Colombo after the O-level results were released. When our science class realized that the work done in school was not sufficient to pass the A-level examination, I was nominated by my classmates to inform the principal of this crisis. The principal asked me to let him know who the best tuition teachers in town were, and he arranged and paid for them to conduct classes in the evenings at Trinity. I am extremely grateful to Mr. Lionel Fernando for this action, as it enabled me to enter the engineering faculty at the University of Moratuwa. Let us now look at the performances of the students at Trinity at their A-level exams during the last 5 years in comparison to our days. The table on the screen shows the percentage of students who qualified nationally for higher education for the different windows permitted by the Department of Examinations and offered by Trinity, and the overall percentages. I obtained this data from the University Grants Commission. The second table shows the percentage of students who qualified from Trinity for higher education for the different windows. I have highlighted in yellow the percentages that have equaled or exceeded the national averages during the last 5 years. We have done best in the bioscience window, where during the last 4 years, our students have exceeded the national averages by significant margins. The arts window, which was Trinity's strength during our days in school, is below the national averages. We cannot be happy with the performances of our students, as we have been above the national average only 50% of the time. The important indicator to me is the percentage who qualified for higher education by obtaining 3 passes at the A-levels, as highlighted in green. I believe when a student enters year 1 at Trinity, it is important for the school to be able to assure the parents the probability of success of him qualifying for higher education at the end of his secondary education. At present, the probability of success is only about 63%. Inversely, 37% on average would not qualify for higher education. I accept that around 20% of the students who sit for their A-level exams may not qualify for higher education. However, the current 37% is of concern. It means nearly 17% who are capable of obtaining 3 passes at the A-level exams are not being successful. I believe the school management should analyze this phenomenon further to understand the reasons for these significant failure rates. I would like to propose the following to improve performances at the A-levels. Firstly, the key performance indicator for both the teachers and the students should be 80% of the students who sit the A-level exams qualifying for higher education. Why is qualifying for higher education important? Our society is no longer prepared to employ a person for a responsible position just because he is a Trinitian or a scion of an old established family if he does not have the required skills. The knowledge society of today provides ample opportunities for an individual to succeed and prosper. The recipe for success in today's society is effective knowledge that an individual has and his willingness to work hard, adapt to change, be innovative, and compete for success. Without academic qualifications, the all-round personality that Trinity education gives priority to, by encouraging participation in sports and extracurricular activities, could find it difficult to compete in the harsher world that value academic and professional qualifications ahead of sporting accomplishments. As you heard, I was fortunate to captain 3 sports at Trinity, and some of my happiest memories from school days are from the sports field. But the glories of the sports field are only for a short time. Qualifications and training are for life and will give you the necessary tools to make a meaningful impact to the world around you. When we were students, the competition to enter local universities was immense, and other opportunities for higher education were limited. Many of my peers did not think it was worthwhile even to attempt to enter the university. Students of today have many paths to obtain academic and professional qualifications. You can choose a field of study that interests and excites you. You are also very fortunate that the parents of today are more involved in your education and provide a lot of help, guidance, and opportunities, sometimes through great personal and financial sacrifice. It is therefore important that at the end of your secondary education, many of you as possible should qualify for higher education. As much as our influential old boys should help the school to improve the performances of our cricket team and the rugby team, we must also help the principal and the dedicated teachers in their attempts to foster academic excellence in our beloved institution. After all, providing a good education is the primary objective of a great school. I earnestly appeal to all boys, parents, well-wishers to establish the academic equivalent of the scrummage, a volunteer body that will help Trinity to overcome the two constraints I believe hinder Trinity's pursuit of academic excellence at the A-level classes and the exams. We must recruit academically talented students who have outstanding results at the O-level exams to our A-level classes from schools in Kandy and regions like Kurunegala and Matale. Why? Smart, intelligent students will always encourage and inspire their peers to work hard and pass the A-level exams. Scholarships and other forms of financial assistance should be offered to attract such outstanding students, as those students would give more to Trinity than what Trinity can give them. Strategies and mechanisms to supplement the incomes of teachers are essential, especially at the A-levels, to attract and retain the services of qualified, experienced, and competent staff members who will be motivated and committed to the noble profession of teaching. Without academically talented students and capable and committed and motivated teachers, one cannot expect results at the A-levels that will demonstrate that Trinity education is pursuing academic excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a knowledge and technology-driven world we live in today, and the future is unpredictable. I believe academic achievement is essential for today's student to survive and prosper. The next part of my presentation is focused on future directions that would adapt Trinity education to meet the requirements of the knowledge society. My proposals and possible initiatives would be within the legal and administrative constraints you have to face as a national school. We must shun and transcend the culture of mediocrity and embrace an organic model of education that celebrates diversity, encourages curiosity, and enhances creativity. There are multiple sources to learn from. Textbook is one component. Instead of being teacher-centered, it is learner and learning-centered, consisting of problem-based, project-based, and inquiry-based methods. Instead of paper and pencil, it is a combination of knowledge, 21st century skills, affective skills, often called attitude, and mindset. Instead of only summative assessment, it uses more formative or qualitative assessments. Over the last 6 years, the University of Moratuwa has changed its methods of assessments on the recommendation of our foreign external examiners and the international accreditation teams that evaluate our degree programs. We have continuously increased formative or qualitative assessments and reduced summative or project-based assessments. Even though it is easier said than done, when we see the improvements in the quality of our graduates, who are now considered to be world-class, all the efforts to overcome the challenges become worthwhile. The 4 attributes of the 21st century curriculum are knowledge, 21st century skills, affective, often called attitudes by employers, and mindset that promotes lifelong learning habits in the students. We discussed the knowledge imparted by Trinity Education using the recent performances of students at the 2 public examinations as with the changing requirements of today's employment markets. Each skill is unique in how it helps students, and all those abilities have one quality in common. They are essential in the age of the internet. Learning skills teach students about the mental processes required to adapt and improve in the modern work environment. Literacy skills focus on how the students can discern facts, publishing outlets, and technology behind them. Life skills look at intangible elements of a student's everyday life. These intangibles focus on both personal and professional qualities. Since these skills are critical for students who are the 21st century learners, let us take a look at these skill requirements closely. Critical thinking is arguably the most important skill among the learning skills, as it helps to identify problems and replace them with solutions. Employers trust those with critical thinking skills to make decisions independently. Getting students to think critically is not easy, as they are used to straightforward questions with answers that involve memory rather than deeper thought. To develop critical thinking skills in students, I propose that Trinity Education should adopt STEM education from the middle school. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and it is one of the most talked about topics in education. We, as educators and parents, sometimes neglect the role of education as a way of helping young people to see and make sense of the world. STEM education instills in our students intrinsic problem-solving abilities, critical thinking skills, and a sense of curiosity, qualities that are of utmost importance to Trinity's education philosophy that prepares students to adapt to the future. Unlike traditional education experiences in which discipline-specific subject areas such as science, mathematics, and technology are concentrated on separately or in silos, as shown on the screen, STEM education emphasizes that science and technology to be interpreted through engineering based in mathematical elements. Science and technology to be interpreted through engineering based in mathematical elements, and integrates subjects in ways that connect disciplines and relate them to each other, making it multidisciplinary. STEM education is a direct response to the realization that our future will be built on our capacity for innovation, invention, and creative problem solving. Each STEM component brings valuable contribution to a well-rounded education. In particular, science gives learners an in-depth understanding of the world around us. In the practice of STEM education, we should not think of engineering as it is normally defined. Instead, it should be viewed more broadly as the action of working skillfully to bring something about. Today, we are developing tools that help us to understand STEM education encompassing all fields of science and technology. One such tool is the magic bit that is considered to be one of the best in the world. This is a magic bit. Magic bit is a tiny computer that was developed in Sri Lanka by a startup company founded by young electronic engineers from the University of Moratuwa. It allows a student as young as 10 years to build inventions using technologies like robotics, computer programming, electronics, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence. Magic bit computers are available with the company at present and would be an ideal gift for your child or a grandchild to develop the interest in STEM. I will be donating this packet of magic bit computers to Trinity at the end of my presentation for our students and the teachers to use it to understand STEM applications. Trinity is endowed with excellent laboratories for most disciplines of sciences. Last evening, we took a walk around the laboratories. During our school days, the use of these laboratories were restricted to the A-level students and were closed most of the time. With the students not required to do laboratory work for their A-level exams, I am not sure whether these laboratory facilities are utilized efficiently today. I propose these laboratory spaces to be utilized for students to carry out the activities needed for the engineering component of STEM education and practice the action of working skillfully to bring something about. Creativity is an equally important learning skill as it empowers students to see concepts in a different light or to think out of the box, which leads to innovations. In any field of study, innovation is the key to adaptability and overall success in learning. It is also claimed that sometimes STEM education may hinder creativity due to its focus on following mathematical rules. Creativity can be enhanced and encouraged by incorporating an arts-based education along with STEM education from an early age. Futurists predict that by 2040, most of the present-day professionals will be replaced by robots and artificial intelligence. Only people who have an intrinsic creative talent which cannot be replicated by a robot will survive. Unfortunately, the current subject combinations offered in education do not encourage the development of natural talents of students. For example, with my training as a civil engineer, I can design a house. It will be very functional, structurally sound, having all the essential features of a modern house. However, it may end up looking like a box. When an architect who is trained to be a creative designer with some structural knowledge designs the house, it will have that livable factor that clients look for when they build a house. STEM education will give you the functional, structurally sound, modern house, having all the essential features. STEM plus arts education will give you the modern house, having all the essential features with the livable factor. I therefore propose that Trinity's future education approach should be one based on STEM plus arts emphasis, as it includes creativity into the multidisciplinary nature of STEM. It is a framework for teaching across disciplines with fun and relaxations to increase critical thinking and creativity skills in students. To truly round out a student's 21st century skills, you need to learn life skills. Even though these skills pertain to your personal life, they also impact your conduct as professionals. Fortunately, the Trinity's all-round model that we knew and experienced nearly 40 plus years ago included these skills and much more. Trinity instilled in us a social conscience to be honest and be honorable, leadership and humility, value of teamwork, initiative with integrity, self-discipline and willingness to work hard and be productive, tolerance and fairness, sympathy and acceptance of others' views and beliefs. These characteristics, which were the hallmarks of the Trinity's famed all-round education approach, were most appreciated by non-Trinitians as those qualities that differentiate a Trinitian from others. For example, nearly 50 years ago, Trinity formed the Canadian dance troupe, joined the Sarvodaya movement to uplift living conditions of extremely poor villagers in Katugastota, and even permitted the Buddhist students movement to conduct an all-night Pirit ceremony at the college hall. I still remember Mr. Lionel Fernando's reaction when in February of 1976, I, as the president of the Buddhist students movement, sought his permission to conduct the first all-night Pirit ceremony in this hall. He was shocked at my request, and after he recovered, he asked me whether I was trying to get him sacked from Trinity. Even though we were disappointed, we understood Mr. Fernando's dilemma. After about 3 months of careful consideration, Mr. Fernando gave me permission on condition that I take responsibility for conducting the ceremony in a dignified manner. Having given us permission, the principal, teachers, and students extended their fullest cooperation. With guidance and advice from the then Mahanayaka Thero of the Askiriya chapter and the Nayaka Thero of the Adahana Malwa temple, we had a very successful ceremony. The principal proved to us that not only was he willing to talk, but he was willing to walk the talk. I'm glad that the Pirit ceremony has been conducted every year since then. Social skills is the important skill that ties all the 21st century skills together for the success of a professional. Business is frequently done through connections one person makes with others around him. This concept of networking is more active in some industries than others, but proper social skills are excellent tools for forging long-lasting relationships. Trinity education approach has always seen the need and the strength of social skills, as well as intercultural, interracial tolerance and harmony. Those of us in the junior school boarding 50 years ago had to speak in English at all times and use the fork and spoon at our meals. Even though we may have longed to speak in our mother tongue and eat with our fingers, we realized the value of that training when we had to interact socially later in life. I believe we still have many of those approaches to instill essential social skills and to imbibe intercultural, interracial tolerance and harmony from a very early age of a Trinity student. Trinity never allowed us to think of ourselves as Sinhalese, Tamils, Burghers or Malays, or even as Christians, Buddhists, Muslims or Hindus. We were friends and brothers first and everything else second. The friends I made at Trinity are still my closest and valued friends. They are part of my family, my brothers, even though they are from different races and religions. Thriving on diversity, respect and tolerance for our differences were the greatest strengths of the Trinity ethos. According to my wife Sunetra, my idea of a perfect evening is when a group of Trinitians get together and repeat the same old stories about the good old days at Trinity. Fortunately for me, her family, the Ellepolas, have a long history with Trinity. Her grandfather, her father, her brother, and most of her uncles and cousins were Trinitians. She knew what to expect from a Trinitian. She is amused and never annoyed. I propose comparative religion and intercultural studies to be taught as a mainstream subject from junior school onwards to encourage our students to think of themselves as Sri Lankans. Similarly, conversational skills in all three languages should be learned by all children from kindergarten to year 9. The Goethe Institute's approach to learn conversational German is a good model to follow. This is particularly essential in the current political scenario where children are taught to hate and divide rather than heal and unite. Now that we have an idea what the 21st century skills are, the critical question is, when should we teach them? The general consensus is that it is important to teach these skills in the middle or early high school. I therefore propose that the 21st century skills to be a part of the learning program from year 6 onwards at Trinity. Being a 21st century educator means having the ability to teach and reach all learners. That means having the ability to differentiate learning so that all students are able to learn using their own unique style and or their ability or readiness level. The emphasis of the 21st century educator is about learning and not teaching as currently practiced by most teachers. Learning pyramid that is on the screen shows what types of teaching and learning will most likely be retained by learners. For example, if the teaching is by lecture and using audiovisual equipment, like what I am doing now, the learner will retain about 20%. If it is by practice and doing as in STEM education, the learner will retain about 75%. By teaching others, the learner will retain about 90%. The best way for a student to learn and understand a subject is to teach it to another. This is called active learning. Lectures while using audiovisual equipment and reading from textbooks, lecture notes are the most common ways used for teaching in our schools as well as in our universities. Yet, those are the least effective ways for students to absorb what is taught. As seen on the screen, only about 30% of what is taught will be learned. Why? Because the current practices emphasizes on passive learning, that is teacher-centered. In a traditional class, it is common for only some students to participate in asking or responding to questions. In contrast, a class with successful active learning activities compel all students to think and engage with learning material as the students lead the learning. All of these proposals can be brought into reality by creating and adapting the blended learning classroom model for Trinity education, based on STEM plus arts education that will have many teachers, discussion boards, tutorials, videos, seminars, free of charge access to content on internet, greater student-teacher interaction with personalized learning paths, access to interactive rich media content, and real-time performance data to give feedback and instructions. High student engagement through active and self-directed learning with 21st century learning skills such as critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. And anytime, anywhere, access to learning and support. I would call this the new normal in our assumed post-pandemic scenario. This is an opportunity for the principal, school management, and the Board of Governors should embrace wholeheartedly to adapt and drive Trinity education into the 21st century. Ladies and gentlemen, I will present a summary of the key points on what I have been talking for the last 45 to 50 minutes. Based on the analysis of the knowledge attribute I presented in the first part, Trinity education should continue with the excellent program Trinity has for the O-levels. The outstanding results over the last 5 years have shown that the program in year 10 and 11 is working very well. Please make sure that the high standards you have achieved will be maintained by taking corrective actions as soon as issues arise. Serious note should be taken of the unacceptable performances by significant portion of our students at the A-levels. The students and the school owe it to the parents who sent you to Trinity to justify their sacrifice and faith in the school by qualifying for higher education. The key performance indicator for success at the A-level exams for both the teachers and the students should be at least 80% of the students who sit the A-level exams qualifying for higher education. To achieve this, I encourage the Board of Governors and the school management to consider recruiting academically talented students who have outstanding results at the O-level examinations to Trinity for their A-levels through scholarships and other forms of financial assistance. Those students would give more to Trinity than what Trinity can give them. Strategies and mechanisms to supplement incomes of teachers at A-levels are essential to attract and retain the services of qualified, experienced, competent, and motivated staff members. Out-of-the-box thinking, like Mr. Lionel Fernando hiring the best tuition teachers in town to conduct classes in the evenings at Trinity, is necessary from school management to develop mutually acceptable approaches for larger percentage of students to qualify for higher education. When a child is sent to Trinity as a 5-year-old, the parents have great expectation on what Trinity would instill in him to become a leader and useful citizen in our society. This boy who was admitted last Tuesday, I would call him the 21st century Trinitian. The way our general education system has evolved today, that child would be at crossroad at the end of year 12, as he has the option of continuing in the local system of education or joining a foreign system for his O-levels. I am of the view that we should strive to ensure that Trinity has done everything that is necessary to meet the expectations of parents and society by the end of year 9. Therefore, Trinity education approach from day one must instill the Trinity values and qualities: honesty, respect, compassion, integrity, self-discipline, fairness, tolerance, with the desired attributes of the Trinity all-round training through participation in sports, extracurricular and society activities, along with the 21st century skills. Ensure the student obtains very good knowledge and skills in science, mathematics, computer programming, and English, which are essential components for STEM education. Encourage critical thinking and curiosity, and enhance creativity in the student by embracing STEM plus arts and active learning processes to our learning approach from year 6. Ensure that most of our assessments up to year 9 are formative or qualitative and less summative or exam-based. Introduce comparative religion and intercultural studies, and ensure the ability to converse in all 3 languages as early as possible to instill in the student the value of intercultural, interracial tolerance and harmony. The paradigm shift that I'm proposing today is Trinity education should adapt to empower the learner and improve learning. Adapt to empower the learner and improve learning. Then, like Reverend Fraser's era, Trinity would position itself to be a trailblazer in the educational arena of Sri Lanka. Lord Bishops, Father Principal, former principals, members of the Board of Governors and the OBA, staff members, parents, students of Trinity, ladies and gentlemen. Let me thank you once again for giving me this opportunity in memory of Reverend Alexander Garden Fraser to repay some of the huge debt I owe to Trinity, for the good education and training, for nurturing me, and for instilling in me a remarkable set of values that have always inspired my life, my career in academia, and my contributions to our society. Trinity has had a glorious past, which we are celebrating today. Our world is changing rapidly and unpredictably due to advances in technology. We can fear change and be in denial, or look forward to change with anticipation and excitement. We have a choice: be static and perish, adapt and thrive. I have every confidence that Trinity and the Trinitians will rise to meet the challenges and have a glorious future as we strive to live by our motto, Respice Finem. Thank you very much.
Fraser said that in less than 20 years, Fraser created not only outstanding school in Sri Lanka, but a pattern to be followed in other lands. And that's what they did. Fraser created a platform. Fraser's challenge at that time was to integrate the British education system with Sri Lankan values, Sri Lankan language, Sri Lankan culture, with the Kenyan culture as well, to create a product of value to Sri Lanka. And that value was an integrated lead of Sri Lanka. It wasn't the British lead, it was the Sri Lankan lead, and that's what Fraser did. And that's the challenge we have today. Our challenge today, as Professor Malik pointed out, is, and Bishop George pointed out as well, is to work within the confines of the Sri Lankan education system. But yet, build 21st century citizens who can go out into the world, who have 21st century skills. And that really is our challenge. And Professor Malik today has given us a plan on what he has defined the problem, and he has told us what we can do to solve this problem. And my talk today is really going to be focused on an operational plan, on how we can operationalize this, and how we can achieve Professor Malik's vision at reasonable cost, scalability, and also sustainability. So we'll start with the vision. And Trinity has always been renowned for producing all-around graduates. We haven't only been about academics, and that is what we need to continue at Trinity. But our focus at this point is four things. We've got to focus on academic excellence. We can't forget the fact that we are a school, and the most important thing is to ensure academic excellence. Secondly, Trinity. We need to ensure an all-around education, which once again is at a bit of a crossroads, both at Trinity and in Sri Lanka as well, because the kids are more and more into tuition, they have less time to spend on sports, on extracurricular activities. So there again begs the question, what is the responsibility of the school? Do we need to be able to create an environment where the students actually have the peace of mind and the time to take part in extracurricular activities? Thirdly, one of the most important aspects of modern education is blended and online learning. And that's not to take the responsibility away from the teachers, but is to make available to students the best resources possible. It's the best. Now, for example, me as a lecturer, when I need to learn something, if I need to learn, the principle of calculus, I no longer need to go to Columbia University or the library. I go online and I go and follow the best lecturer in Princeton or Harvard or MIT. So their lecturers are all online. So the idea is that now because of technology, I have a chance to learn from the very best, and the very best will continuously update what's going on around the world. So we need to make that available to our students. And that's where blended learning is very, very important. And as Professor Malik pointed out, bringing 21st century skills is what's going to make the 21st century better. So it's our responsibility once again as a school to incorporate all four aspects of our education, which will finally lead us to be able to produce the 21st century better. So to achieve this, we can't do things together, we have to change. There has to be an operational and an organizational change, which will allow us to do this. So just to show you the complexity of this whole picture, we visualize all the 21st century students' journey. So as a school, we need to take the student kindergarten, grade 1 to 3, middle school, grade 1, upper school, and then finally send them to university. Those are the primary responsibilities of the school, and also to guide the students to the primary decision points, which is the scholarship exam, or level exam, and the advanced level exam. In Trinity, of course, we need to expose them to extracurricular activities and sports right throughout their career. But then, this is very complicated. Once again, the whole responsibility of the school at this point is to prepare the students for the next step. And this next step is either university, going to be a different training, or some form of employment. And we as a school need to prepare the students the best we can possibly can for their next step. And as part of the way the world is moving, schools are now increasingly expected to provide pastoral care, which is look after the emotional and psychological well-being of the students as well. Schools are also expected to provide some level of educational counseling, career guidance, once again to get them to the next step. But the thing is, everything that's on this picture here, most schools around the world already do. Some do it better than most. But unlike 100 years ago, the differentiation between those who do it well and those who don't do it so well is not so great because of technology. And that is where schools like Trinity are struggling on how do we differentiate ourselves, something. And then we begin what Malik was talking about today, which is how do we build all this together does not make the business prepare something for university, but we got to bring those other aspects. We got to bring in blended learning. And blended learning, it is for me, it is like I said, it's very important to expose the students to the best possible resources. But it's also probably one of the most important tools now for me to develop what I consider to be one of the most important skills, which is the ability to continuously learn or lifelong learning. It's the openness of your mind to continuously keep learning new things, doing new things, and keeping doing things, and not stopping once you're done in school or university. And that training you get it, and the learning that you learn on your own, I feel, is that point where students are trained on how to continuously learn throughout their life. And to this, you can add Trinity values, skills, STEM, comparative religion, intercultural studies, and languages. So this is the training of a student. So the problem here is, as a school, with the resources we have, the teachers we have, and the money we have, it's exceedingly difficult to track, support, and guide the students across all these different activities. And that's where the challenge lies. Like, how can a school do it? And that's what my talk is about. How can they use technology to achieve all this at a reasonable cost in a sustainable way, in a scalable way. So if you look at the trends in education right from the world, everything that I showed in my previous slide is being implemented around the world. And the way let me show you. From a teacher's viewpoint, the ability to use technology means that the teacher knows at any given time what every student is doing. They know exactly what the situation, what the perspective of the student is. Now, if you are a teacher, you will only know how well the student is doing on the subject. But in this case, you will know what the student is doing across all the different aspects, and you will have a single snapshot of the student. You would also be able to allow the student to learn at their own pace, which is a very important thing. Not that the student is the same, which is sort of what our education system assumes. But to allow different students of different capacities, ones who are good, ones fast, ones who are slow, give them more time to get to that point. But technology-based education allows the school to manage that in different ways. And that's a 360 view. In terms of the students, you've got to think that if you build this type of technology in ways, I'm going to be developing so many other skills rather than only doing my exams. Which means I'm going to be more employable, I get more place and work, I'm going to earn much more money, and my career is going to progress faster. So this is all geared towards the improvement in the students. So the solution, like I said, is this technology-driven education, which is an integrated data platform to tracks the code and guide the student. And here I'm drawing upon my experience over the last almost 20 years of working in the industry, where I've not only developed new machine learning, AI-based solutions for solving industrial problems from across simulations, gaming, drones, pharmaceutical, because I work in a lot of different industries. But my focus has not only been building the technology, but also figuring out how operational, how to integrate it into the companies in the way that it actually works within the operation of the company. And it always works with the integrated technology platform. And it may sound like a really complex word, but really is this. In school, we have all these different aspects where data is collected from student details, teacher reports, term marks, national test marks, house activity, clubs and societies, online platforms, everything that we use in blended learning. You need to build a platform where all that data is collected and sent into a centralized database. Manage it to central learning management system, which by no father is already working on as part of the plan. The technical roadmap for Trinity College to our own learning management system. And then once all the data is in that central database, of course we can send it into analytics, we can give a dashboard, we can do reporting, we can build alert and system. So it's really what creating this infrastructure. And my experience in these type of systems, not these systems can be overnight. Even companies like Amazon and Google, 15, 20 years to build these systems. It's an incremental build, where you build part by part by part by part, but you have a long-term roadmap. And in about 10 years, I will do this whole system. And I'll show you how the system will do. And then using the dashboard, the teachers will know exactly what every single student is doing at any given time. And that will form the basis of the integrated data system. And of course, this can be linked to the student information system, which once again college is building, and the students and the parents can have access to this information as well. So really, to do this technology-based transformation of the company, of a school, just building a technology platform on its own is not, there are other things which need to fall into place for a transformation like this to work. So really, what you need is a digital infrastructure. You can collect all the data and disseminate the data. You need what's called a data-driven culture, which I'll explain very briefly today. And we got to switch to object-based learning. I'll show you an example of how we can operationalize object-based learning with blended learning in training. So the first building block is the digital infrastructure. Once again, we have this central database where we have all the analytics and all that built in. And we have all the sources of data, which is the classrooms, school IT, and very importantly now, home access and mobile access through school network or internet. And we need to create a digital infrastructure which ties to these two sides together. And that is the difference what we are getting where we are getting the data from. Next, very importantly, you need to have a culture change. The way people think about teaching, the way they think about learning has to change. And that once again, in the education context, is 4 things. You have to move into hybrid learning, Next, both the teachers and the school have to move on to a descriptive method, which is everybody is obsessed with collecting data and then operating on that data. So if your teacher must think, how do I capture what I know about this student and how I do it? The teacher's thought process has to change that mindset. And then the administration has to always also think, how do I go about this data? And make decisions that make it easier. Something that's very important in this system as well, to make sure that every student meets the objective and we leave no student behind, is to also build a culture of community. To make sure that when we find that a student is falling behind, we have mechanisms in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. To go back and provide extra classes for these teachers, but once again, it's got to be built into the mechanism. Where it's not a person on favor that the teacher that's what this is part of the system. Where the system shows that the student is falling behind, we can immediately trigger, and there are mechanisms that fall into place to allow remediation to happen. And then once we build all these systems, we can move on to the next generation of analytics, which is to actually do predictions, predictive analytics, building AI and all that. It may sound far-fetched for some of you, but believe me, this is what has been doing for the last 8 years. And it's not rocket science. This type of stuff is being done by students, kids all around the world, building this AI system. So it's not hard at all. There's always a performance solutions to help college out with this. And then finally, what I think is the most important change we need to bring in this culture is an operational change, which is to bring in objective-based learning. I've been very fortunate to have spent about 6 to 7 years at Oxford University, and I've done some lectures, both as a PhD student, as a tutor, and a lecturer. And one of the things that makes Oxford and Cambridge really unique is the education system that they've built over the last 200, 300 years, where they separated out co-content deliveries, lectures, and tutors. So in Oxford, the way that happens is you have large lecture halls where everybody comes and follows the lectures. But then, after the lectures, all the students pick up much smaller groups, maybe 8, 10, 12 students, and they go out and they have tutorials. And in this tutorial, what they do is they discuss, have examples, have use cases of what was done in content delivery. So the big difference here is that in Oxford especially, you have at least one tutorial we need to do what Trinity has always done. The ethos that President Fraser set up just to create. The look to the end when Fraser's opinion was focus on final results. Fraser's goal, like I said, was to focus on developing leaders. Leaders for the country, but leaders for Sri Lanka, and leaders. And our challenge today is similar. So, of course, like you pointed out, if we are to develop the 21st century, Fraser developed the system, developed 20th century Trinity, we need to go beyond that. Now build 21st century Trinity. And for that, we need academic excellence, we need all-round skills, we need 21st century skills, we need blended learning, we need to move on to objective-based learning, and tie that all together with digital infrastructure. Basically, we, of course, Malik said, we are at Boston, and we have opportunities to be an example and pattern for education. There are many institutions we are organized, and we have the ability and the infrastructure and people in place. Just like Trinity calls out on all boys to build buildings and architects, again, it's really far that there will be more IT professionals who are champions out there than in your industry. So building infrastructure like this is not hard. We have Trinitians who work at Google, Microsoft, NASA, you've got to all they can help us. But this is the next step that we need. So really, as a school, I think it's time for us to once again look to the end and really focus on building 21st century Trinity. Thank you.
Extremely entertaining and informative presentations. I definitely learned a lot. They were those say. And now I would like to call upon Professor Ranasinghe on stage for the Q&A session. And to our audience, if you all have any questions regarding today's oration, please raise your hand and a member of the STF will join you with a mic, and you may simply voice out your questions to today's speakers. Do we have any questions? I think I see one. Can you stand up, please?
Given that most of us here are still in the middle of our academic careers, what steps can we take to incorporate elements of 21st century learning into our education that moving into the future will benefit from somewhere?
I thought we would get a question. And then the question would be, okay, this is for the future, for the other students who are coming, maybe the 21st century Trinitian, what are we? Right. These are not difficult things. If you really think, we are doing most of it in Trinity anyway. It is just that what we are losing out is a more intense focus on academic sides. It was never, I wouldn't, oops, I don't have my face mask, that's okay. Anyway, So, for example, today in terms of content, the pandemic has really created a difference. We have, if you take A-level classes, especially with things like dialogue and DP education, you are getting the best lecturers or best tuition masters telling you what you need. So you don't really have to cut classes anymore and say it's not there, it's available. The time that you have should be focused more, especially all, on how to understand and learn to implement those things, to look at the problems, not just the lecture, but then go beyond it. So for both DP education, we have been proposing that we would help them to not only do the lecture, but also put in the assessments there, so the student would learn that also. And that's the part that is missing, where you would do the assessments, you would learn a little bit more, right? Now, what we are also offering, which I had in my presentation and took out, this March, those of you who are doing the A-levels will be exposed to a new program. Moratuwa University is coming free of charge, along with the private providers, where we are offering you a course called a full stack trainee, full stack developer, free of charge to all students who do A-levels. We are expecting about 100,000 to join, and the University of Moratuwa Learner Management System can absorb that. And it is a 6-course program that will prepare every student to obtain what is needed in today's IT world. So that our idea is that if you come to the university, you will have all the basic things, whether it's medicine, humanities, engineering, that you need today in terms of IT. In terms of the language, it's going to be on Python based, and in terms of what you need in terms of web development. Those who don't go to the university would also have that for people like Ramesh, industry-ready graduate, industry-ready student, a trainee, within 6 months. And we expect it to change the way education works. Because the student who is coming out, for the 6 months that you hang around in home, is not going to be there anymore. Like in the rest of the world, it's not a government initiative, it's a pure university industry initiative with no charge to anybody. It's done absolutely free. We need to make sure that as many students as possible are ready to, when you go to the university or when you go to industry. Because today, IT industry is the one that will push us to the future. That's where 100% of the value addition is coming. And that's where we want most of our educated students to look at. Because the opportunities are endless. And here's a classic example.
That's right. I have a mic. So, Professor Malik is spot on. You've got to take control of your future. You can't think that just passing O-levels and A-levels and getting into university is good enough for you. You've got to have master's skills. The way I look at it is having a degree will only get you into the job. But how you progress through the job, how will you advance and how you go to the next step, get promotions, get salary advances, is all about your 21st century skills, your communication, your leadership, your productivity, such as that you've got to do yourself. You've got to find what college can offer you and take part in debating, drama, sports, you name it, to build those skills. But then if you find that you're lacking in anything, like Prof. Malik said, it's all there online now. But you've got to take control of your life. And one of the most important aspects which I think is needed, one of the most important 21st century skills is continuous learning and lifelong learning. Good example is the job I do now. Did not exist when I was in school. So if I had planned for a particular career, I wouldn't be able to do what I do now, which is an artificial intelligence expert. Which, 30 years ago was just a theoretical job, but now it's one of the most high-paid jobs in the world. So if you plan for a particular career now, chances are that career might not exist, or it might not be that important. So you've got to develop that ability to continuously adapt and evolve and change as a
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Just the 150 celebration project, principal tells me it was done by all students. That's exactly what we are talking about. If you can operationalize, plan it, and deliver students, that's the project-based learning, that's the things that we are looking for. If you can do that, then you got a lot of those skills. We are talking theoretically. That's the thing that we have to put in. So I was very happy when the principal told me that this whole thing is run by students. And I was very impressed last evening when I came. There was nobody here, just the students telling me what to do, practicing my voice, seeing whether you heard it properly, which was very impressive. And so those are the skills. It's not learning, it's being able to learn and then be able to put it into play. And that's what you guys are doing. So everybody involved in that, in the 150 celebration, hats off. You have done an excellent job.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Brother. Abid, brother.
Whilst agreeing with you on the objective-based learning, my next question is, what's in the part of implementation, how are we going to go about at Trinity College? From the side of teachers, do we have the capabilities and the qualities of that nature? And on the part of the students, the capabilities and the learning part, can you further elaborate on that?
The way to do it is everybody should write, or if you're, now at Moratuwa our requirement is if you're launching anything, you must first write the media briefing. What is the media brief? What's your media brief going to be? And then what is the product? Ours is in case of a student or a trained person, what is that product going to look at the end of the day? So the moment you think on those lines, that's the same thing, you bring it down. A grade 4 teacher, taking from Mauritius example, tells what he expects at the end of the year the student to be. You promise that to the student and then you deliver it. And we all have to do it. We all have to do it at Moratuwa because when we are assessed internationally, that's a requirement. They all come and look at the objectives and how we deliver them.
Sorry. I believe Brother Lionel had a question.
Thank you. First, let me thank you very, very much indeed. It was a very comprehensive approach that you had. And I love the way that you talked about integration and the holding of diversity. Some of the other language of technology, I'm afraid I'm for the age of the dinosaur and I wouldn't be able to understand very much. But it's wonderful, very good stuff. Something that you said, which I really appreciated, Professor Ranasinghe, is that the question that you mentioned about ways of integrating by doing things like comparative religions, the study of each other's identities and intercultural studies. And I think that is a very, very important one, because at the moment we are becoming very segregated in this country, into religious schools, and even within schools, breaking down, it's very sort of restricted and very exam-orientated, where you've got to, sit for papers that are totally unimaginative. But I like the approach that you have of integrating Because what I would really like you to think of is the rationale, why. You know, we looked at the how, we looked at the desirability, but the motivation of what kind of society are we trying to build. And I think that is the spirit, there's spirituality there that we need, in a sense, to recover. Now, this is a question which I don't know whether you'll be comfortable in thinking about. The motivation of our different partners, of our different religions, of our different cultures. And I wonder whether that is being adequately looked at. I mean, you made a very good point that we need to do it. And to do this, in a sense, how can we, in a sense, reform or fight the system that prevails now? And I like to take the example of Fraser, who at a time when he was under severe restraints by the church authorities, he moved the cornerstone of the chapel to where it is, and he built it in a different way, with an idea of integration. He had to fight the church authorities, he had to fight the board of governors, which is another big problem, but he did it, and he was able to stand up. Now, I wonder whether, you know, this kind of action is, how would you sort of look at it, and how would you integrate that into a study at a university or at a school, the spiritual aspect and the acceptance of different spiritualities and how they can contribute a kind of coalition of religions, in a sense, a coalition of peoples, to be able to forge a new society.
Thank you, Father. Thank you. Okay, the point I came was from when we finished our O-levels, we had about 4 or 5 months, or year 11 is was not heavy, and there used to be a class called General English and Comparative Religion, just to keep the students occupied. It was done by different teachers. The year we did it, we were fortunate. Lionel Fernando decided that he was going to take the class. And when he said, I am taking a class, it was split into 3. Only a few of us turned up, because nobody wanted. But after two classes, virtually the whole grade was there, because he discussed a variety of subjects. And he showed us, as that impressionable age, how we should start looking beyond just our own confines. And that's why I said when he gave us permission to have the Pirit ceremony, he actually walked the talk. Because it's one of those things that he talked about. So when we asked him permission, I knew that he was in a dilemma, because he had told that, and then he was, as he had to follow the rules at Trinity, it was not easy for him. So we must start building those from a younger age. Let the students start thinking, especially with the comparative religion. You know, teach the language, but also be able to. I don't know how to do it. That's why I'm keeping it to you all, to look at it and think about it, because that's very important today for the student. The message he's getting today is not of harmony and getting together. It's always about division. So Trinity could set that example. Maybe by the time you guys are adults, there would be a different way of thinking in this country. So I really don't have, I mean, while I appreciate what you're saying, Father, I really don't have an answer. But certainly something we have to think and try and implement it, not just at the O-levels or after O-levels, but start building it much earlier as a part of the normal. It should be something more that Trinity can give.
Yeah. Let me add to that with more from an employer's perspective and put that spin onto it as well. And like Professor Malik said, 2 of the most important skills that we need in 21st century society is social skills and teamwork. And a big part of that is also understanding the people in your team and empathizing with them. And, you know, even in my companies, we've had problems. You know, when there were communal problems in Sri Lanka, when there were, you know, riots happening all over the place, there was friction in our teams. But, you know, this type of thing really, in my knowledge, has never happened in Trinity, because we were always very integrated, and we spent time with all communities, and we always empathized. We understood about other communities from a very young age. But that type of experience does not really happen in most other schools, and that is why, you know, we do have some of these problems. So especially from a social skills perspective and team building and stuff, I think it's very important to have that grounding.
Not student to be fed participate. The approach we are taking all over the place is not working. And even at the universities, we are changing very fast because we are realizing that give the students the guidance and they will run. And that's what we are doing at Moratuwa. Of course, we are fortunate we get the best students in the country come in there, so you really don't have to teach them. You give them the guidance and they run. And but having said that, there is the differences. And it's the learner that we have to focus on. And that's the 21st century is all about. That's the thing that Trinity should do, start looking at how we can improve the learner.
Since we are under certain time constraints, we have come to the end of today's Q&A session. Thank you to all the questions, and I request both speakers to remain on stage. And to present the tokens of appreciation, I call upon our Vice Principal, Mr. Krishantan Anthonydas, and the Co-Vice Principal, Mr. Ananda Marasinghe. And to wrap up today's proceedings, I call upon the Senior Prefect, Dulara Alawategama, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Right Reverend Dushant Rodrigo, Chairman of the Board of Governors and the Bishop of Colombo, Right Reverend Kirtisiri Fernando, Bishop of Kurunegala, other Right Reverend Bishops, Venerable Archdeacon Reverend George Melder, Reverend Father Araliya Jayasundara, the Principal, Reverend Father Shelton Samadhanam, the Chaplain, other Reverend Fathers, Honorable Lalit U. Gamage, Governor of Central Province, Honorable Tikiri Kobbekaduwa, Governor of Sabragamu Province, Honorable Kesara Senanayaka, Mayor of Kandy, members of the Board of Governors, the dignitaries of the Provincial Council and the Department of Education, former principals, staff members of Trinity College, parents, members of the Old Boys Association, and my dear colleagues. A very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I would like to thank the principal for giving me this opportunity to deliver the vote of thanks in this memorable occasion. I'm greatly honored to be part of the A.J. Fraser Memorial Oration done in commemoration with the sesquicentennial anniversary celebrations of our school. I stand before you as the head prefect of the school, as head prefect of the School Officers Guild, which was formed by Reverend Fraser himself. 150 years is a very long time period for a school to function, and that is a milestone that we all as Trinitians should be very proud of. I would like to take a moment to recollect all the hard work done by our forefathers, of which we are reaping the benefits today. I would like to name this event as a way of paying tribute to all their hard work done during the past 150 years. An event of this nature cannot be organized if we didn't have outstanding personalities. Therefore, I would like to take this opportunity to thank them individually. First and foremost, a big thank you to Professor Malik Ranasinghe and Dr. Romesh Ranavana for accepting our invitation despite their busy schedules to be our keynote speakers at today's event. I'm sure that all of us were inspired by your orations. Thank you, sirs. I must express our deep sense of appreciation to all the religious leaders who accepted our invitation and participated in this event. Your participation really means a lot to us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, an event of this caliber cannot happen overnight. The wheels started rolling months ago. It requires meticulous planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of highly motivated and dedicated students named as the Student Task Force, who are the brains behind this entire event. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank them as well. I would be failing in my duties if I don't thank the principal, the college administration, members of the staff, Old Boys Association, and my entire School Officers Guild for helping us make this event a success. I cannot thank everyone enough for their involvement and their willingness in taking on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. I take this opportunity to appreciate all their efforts and hard work. Finally, once again, I want to mention that we are most grateful to all the individuals who helped us make this event a possibility. Before concluding, I would like to quote T.B. Marabe, the senior prefect of 1938. Though the road takes you east, though the road takes you west, here in Kandy, you will find the school that is best, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for being with us this afternoon. It's indeed been a great pleasure. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you. Respike Finem.